On this edition of Influence Living, you're going to meet Michael. Michael is from New Zealand. As a kid, he dealt with bullying. Later in life, he dealt with depression. What influenced him in his life? You're going to find out. And then you're going to meet Cristie. Cristie is going to tell you her story of how that her life was absolutely spinning out of control until something influenced her. And then finally, Bobby will tell you. We call him Bar Fight Bobby. He was a rough character until things changed his life. All that and much more right here on Influence Living. Welcome to this edition of Influence Living. I'm your host, Wade. Here on Influence Living, we talk to individuals from all over the world, actually, and we say, hey, what has really influenced your life? What has made a difference? Have you ever noticed that some people just seem to have an air of confidence around them, even though things can be going on bad within their own families and themselves, but yet they're still so solid? Something is influencing them. And we asked them, what is it on this program? The first fellow is a fellow by the name of Michael from New Zealand. He has dealt with a lot of rejection in his life and with anxiety and depression. As a young boy, he was bullied in school, and so many people deal with that various ways. They go to alcohol, they go to drugs to deal with that kind of hurt. But he went another direction. Someone else influenced him. He's going to tell you the story right now.
I was brought up in the Philippines. My parents were missionaries. I was about 6 months old when I went over. We spent 15 years over there. It was my life. I went to American school, and I really didn't know much about my country that I came from. I grew up in the American system, and it was very eye-opening. And one of the hardest things I had is when I was 13 years old, I was 6'4", so I was a big boy. And unfortunately, because I wasn't American and I lived with, we went to school with about 900 American kids, I was bullied big time. And I was scared to go to school every day. I loved coming home and hanging out with the Filipinos and playing basketball, and I just hated school. So for me, I came back to New Zealand. My parents brought me back because of the bullying. I didn't want to go to school. So when I came back to New Zealand, I went into apprenticeship. I did jobs. I was qualified, and then I went to the States where I'd never been in my life, and I lived there for 2 years. And I really found that all the things that I'd been taught about at school about America didn't really come up to the level of the things that I'd been taught. I came to know Christ when I was quite young. We lived on an American compound. It's FEBC compound, Far East Broadcasting Company. Even though it was a compound and we had guards in that, we actually got robbed about 8 times. And I remember one morning, it was very hot, and coming out and lying on the sofa. And at 6 o'clock in the morning, I got back up and went to my bedroom. And my dad woke me up in the morning and said, "Son, we've been burgled again." We came out, and where my head was on the sofa was a footprint. And that really scared me. And my dad just sat down. My dad's the most amazing man. If there was a Jesus, my dad would be him. He just loves people. Has a massive heart, and he's my role model. And he sat me down and he just said, "Son, things happen in life, and sometimes they're there for a reason." And and he told me about the Jesus that I know, and that he'd always be there and keep me safe. And and I committed my life to him at the age of 10. Now, over my lifetime, I've done so many things. I've been a school teacher. I've traveled around the world doing all different things. And I used to own a large company in New Zealand. And I worked for a larger company, and I was one of their main contractors. I have recently lost 3 companies by being bullied by a big company. My company did the right thing. We had and I had the rights to be right, but when you don't have the money to rewrite, I think it was the fact that I knew who I was as a person. I loved people, I cared for people, but I found no matter what you did, it never came back. And they didn't really see you for the person you were. And I really struggled with thinking that I had to change to suit what they wanted. But I kept strong, and I fell into burnout from there, which led to depression. And I lost my wife. We went through a divorce during that time. We had 4 children, 4 under 4. Had all these pressures and stresses that just were beyond coping with. But I had my faith. A lot of the things that we learned from the Brethren Church were scripture, were songs, and I had to sort of like simplify my faith at that time, because when you're under a lot of stress and going through a depressed state, you tend to want to grab onto those things which really are just simple. So for me, my God is a loving God. He cares for me no matter what. He's going to be the person that stands beside me through anything, through bullying, through the pressures of life. I've really found a peace, and He's slowly giving me that joy back. And the biggest joy I've had, I was sitting on the side of the bed going, Lord, what have you got for me? And He, I don't really hear words and stuff like that, but He said to me, Michael, I'm going to give you back a gold mine, something, and I'm going to give you back everything that you lost. And I just said to Him, look, the biggest gold mine for me is finding someone who's going to love me and accept me for the way I am. Through all the ups and downs and my big story, and He did. And I've been married for 2.5 years to an amazing woman. I'm the happiest man alive. But till this day, I still deal with depression. I am on medication. I still have all the stresses of life, and I'm having to learn to balance that day by day. But every day's a new day.
Michael talked to us about the bullying that he had to deal with as a young man, and then how that anxiety and depression and other things came against him, and how he dealt with it. And fortunately for him, he found that God would influence his life and has made a difference in his life. And so Michael told us his story, and so that should give you hope. That is our hope here on Influence Living. That's why we ask these kind of questions, because we want your life to be better after hearing the stories of these individuals. You know what made a difference in Michael's life? And that was Jesus Christ. Jesus is God, and God will make a difference in your life. Yeah, we'll never have heaven on earth, perhaps, but you can have a bit of heaven in your heart, and God can be living in you and giving you that hope. And that's exactly what Michael experienced. Here's how to begin a journey now with Jesus. Listen, it's not about giving money. It's not about going to church. Oh, those things might be good. It's not about doing good. That's good, but that doesn't get you right with God. What gets you right with God is a relationship with Jesus. Jesus said this, that He was the way, the truth, and the life, and nobody comes to the Father except through Him. That's what Jesus said. And so here's how you begin a journey with Jesus, to find that purpose like Michael found, that peace in your life. You could say it with me right now. Come on, you can say this with us. If you're watching us in New Zealand, thanks so much for watching. Australia as well, or South Korea, thank you so much for watching. And Europe and other parts of the world. Would you just pray with me? Say, God, I believe in You. Jesus, I know You are God. I know You died for my sins. I'm a sinner. Come into my life. Release me from that anxiety, that hopelessness, and fill me with Your hope. In Jesus' name, amen. I just want to say congratulations for making that decision to follow Jesus Christ. Listen, here at Influence Living, we want to ask you to do something. Begin to talk to God on a daily basis. That's called prayer. Listen, He hears you. And then also, would you grow up in your faith in Him by reading the Bible? Go to the Christian Bible in the book of John, start to read out about who Jesus is, and then go to a local Christian church and say, listen, I made a decision to follow Christ. Would you please help me? I need help in my journey. If they don't help you at that church, go find one that will. Here at Influence Living, we would love to know of your decision to follow Christ. What you could do is you could just shoot me a quick email at wade@influenceliving.com. That's wade@influenceliving.com. And let us know of your decision to follow Christ, or perhaps your God story that you'd like to tell us about. We have a group of people that'll be praying with you as well. And so please do that. You can also mail us. You see our email or our traditional mail address right there here in Orlando. You can also go on Facebook or go to YouTube and connect with us there. Influence Living at both of those locations. Listen, one more thing, men particularly, if you would like to grow up in your faith in Christ, I've recently written a men's devotional that I'd love to make sure that you have in your hands. You can go to Amazon and pick a copy up. It's simply called 39 Stripes. Right now I think on Amazon it's like $9 US, and they will ship it to you. So it's called 39 Stripes, and we'd love for you to pick up a copy, and it'll just challenge you. It's just several days worth of challenge, and it'll make a difference, I believe. Well, up next here on Influence Living, we're going to meet somebody by the name of Cristie. Now, Cristie's going to tell us her story. Her life was spinning out of control. She was looking for purpose. Looking for somebody she could trust, and she went from man to man and from party scene to party scene, but still there was no hope until something influenced her life. Here's her story.
I was born in Florida. I'm a Florida girl through and through. Love cold weather, but only for a week or two, and then I'm ready to come back to Florida. I currently take care of my nieces full-time, and I'm also children's church pastor at my church. I enjoy kids. I came from a wonderful family. I have one brother and then my parents, and they're amazing. My mom raised me as a Christian. I was asked Jesus into my heart, I would say, when I was a young girl, and very blessed to be able to do so. I would say I was very serious about knowing who Jesus was and learning about Him and all the amazing stories, and just really enjoyed learning about Him and how He asked Him into your heart, He died for our sins, and it's just amazing. And then, well, let's hit the teenage years. As a teenager, I was a bit wild, I guess you could say. Not too many people would see that on the outside. Not too many people would know that about me. I would say had my first boyfriend when I was first real boyfriend at 15, 16, and you were in love. I loved him. He was, woo. Teenage love, you're all about him. But I began to fall into the realm of premarital sex by 17, I would say. I actually was with him for a year and had, sexual relations at 17, and just was so ashamed. I was so ashamed. It was just very shameful, and I was always taught that sex is between a husband and a wife when you're married, and that's just the way it is. No ifs, ands, or buts about it, and you just get into a dark place with that. And it began, I would say, with him, and then my next boyfriend, who actually became my husband, the same way, which later we divorced. But you're a Christian girl, you were raised in church, you have been taught nothing but, here's what it is, here's the Bible says it's love, sex is between a man and a woman, and when you're married, that's like, your special time. And here I am dabbling in this, and it's very shameful, very embarrassing to talk about. I met this counselor through my divorce, and she was amazing, and she would pray with me before each session. And I was actually talking about how to give my testimony for young adults. And she was talking and praying with me, and she goes, you know what? You had an awesome earthly father, but now it's time to let Jesus be your father and guide you and take those footsteps. And just, you may have made mistakes by marrying the wrong person, and you may have made mistakes as a teenager, but he forgives you for all of that. He loves you through all of that. He forgives you. It's forgotten. It's gone. Stop beating yourself up for it. Make plans for your future. Take today and continue to walk in that path as you were as a little girl. And just let him clear it all for you. So she prayed with me, and, I was open again. I was like, okay, you know what? It's time to stop all this. I had done some things after the divorce, kind of fallen back into that high school path with some men, and it's do I feel shame for it? Sometimes, but looking back, it is what it is, and it's my past, and it's my story, and but now, God has opened so many doors for me. I'm now children's church pastor at my church, and this all happened during all of that. And I love kids so much. And what I came to the realization was I wanted to be married so bad, and I want to be a mom so bad that I did all of those things thinking that the men would love me enough to marry me and have children with me. And I'm not married right at the moment, and that's okay. I'm okay with that, because there's so much more to being married than there is, not being married. I know God has a plan. Jesus has a plan for everyone. You just have to be willing to stick to his word, read his word, just spend time with him. He's a father when you need him. He's there when you need him. He's there when nobody else is. And so that's what you have to remember.
Well, I just want to remind you that you're watching Influence Living. I trust that you enjoyed Cristie's story and gained something from that. Up next here on Influence Living, we're going to meet a fellow by the name of Bobby. Now, Bobby grew up on the streets of New York, and really life for him was rough. But then finally, God influenced his life. You're going to hear how Bobby spent a lot of time in bars fighting, but now he's doing something totally different. Here's his story.
I was born in Brooklyn in 1978, the month of February. We didn't have much, but it was, I never felt like I was lacking anything because I had two parents at the time who were saved. It came to a point one time where my parents had gotten divorced. My father had to leave, and he was a man of God. When my father left, I guess that's when I can say that the presence of God had left too, because my mother had backslidden. So while my father continued his relationship with Christ, my mother didn't. She didn't pursue Christ at all. And so for many years, I lived in fear. I lived in shame. I didn't know why I was going through these things, all these negative emotions. Sometimes, I was so gripped with fear that I couldn't speak to defend myself or to say what happened. If I got in trouble, I just couldn't. My mouth would just remain silent. I don't know what was wrong with me. I grew up in a school. It was predominantly Irish and Italian. So me being the only Puerto Rican, I'm the one to pave the way, so to speak. And I had to endure a lot of racism. I was spit on. I was called every racial slur in the book, because I was a little brown skinned. I didn't know what racism was. I didn't even know why I was getting spit on, but that's something I had to endure. So while I'm growing up sad, I'm growing up angry, I'm growing up bitter. I had a chip on my shoulder, you can say. I had everybody to blame my mother, blame my father, blame white people, blame everybody, blame somebody. I saw no reason to pursue God or to pursue Jesus or any type of relationship with him. So I started, doing what I wanted to do. I was all about partying, hanging out, drinking, smoking, girls, and just trying to live my life for me. I know I turned my back on God. And there were times where I actually took God for granted, and I thought that he was gonna protect me all the time just because. And that wasn't the case, because I started getting arrested in the streets for petty nonsense. I started getting into fights. Sometimes I would end up in the hospital because I would get jumped. Then sometimes I would be involved in jumping others. Things in the streets, and I thought maybe God was protecting me, that I can do what I want. My father had taught me from the very beginning, if you're not saved, if you're not serving God, you could lose your soul in hell, and I knew that. But the pleasures of the world I couldn't resist. One day my father picks me up to go to one of these outdoor evangelistic services, and you got preachers there, you got singers there. So I go again because I felt obligated to go because my father wanted me there. And I'm watching these people get up and grab the mic, and they're preaching. Some are giving their testimony, and I'm looking at my watch because I had a party to throw later on that night. So I finally get home, I set up the barbecue, I set up the tables, I had liquor and beer everywhere. During the party, I was already inebriated, and I get a phone call from one of my so-called friends, and he tells me that he's at the pool hall getting robbed. So I run over there in a drunken rage to start a fight with somebody that I didn't even know who was robbing my friend. So I go over there and I find the guy who hit him, and I hit him. I wasn't paying attention to who was around me. One of his friends came behind me and stabbed me in the neck. I fell to the ground, and I heard a voice that said, "Get up." I know that was the voice of God because I never heard a voice like that before. Little did I know that my friend lied to me, and I started a fight for no reason. And I found out after the fact that he really didn't get robbed, and somebody had just hit him. My cousin pulls me out of there. As I'm going to my cousin's house, because he didn't live too far away from me, I noticed that I was bleeding. So I touch the back of my neck, and I pull out a piece of the knife. I go to the hospital that night, right? And I'm thinking to myself, wow, I could have died tonight, and I could have lifted my eyes in hell. If I was to show you the scar on my neck, a little bit more further down, it would have got my artery, and I would have bled out. At that preaching, the day of, before my party, I had promised my friend Susan to go to church with her the next day. I left the hospital, and I'm thinking to myself, what a fool I was. So the next day, my friend Susan came right on time. I put on my button down. I tried to look the best I could for church. And she took one look at me and she says, "Oh, you don't have to come to church." I was bruised up, I had lumps, I had stitches on my neck. I was messed up, but I said, no, I'm gonna go to church. So it came, during the service, they had an altar call. I answered the altar call, and I was serious about God. And it was no more playing with God, no more rejecting God. I had to surrender fully to God. And I did it, you know, and it's funny because I had to be humbled. I had to show up to church with stitches and bruises. Did it have to be that way? Of course not. You know, we make our choices, and God does not force himself on us. He's a perfect gentleman, you know, but the devil almost had me, and he didn't get me. So I thank God for that.
Bobby's story is pretty cool, isn't it? A guy that was on the streets and been in all kind of fights and all sorts of things. And now what he's actually doing is he's working with other teenagers like he used to be, and he is now putting them on the right path. So he has turned absolutely a 180 and making a difference in people's life because of God's influences in his life. Now he is influencing others, and you can do the same. You can make a difference in the lives of others if God has made a difference in your life. And we want to give you the opportunity right now to make a decision to follow Jesus Christ. And really, listen, it's not a magical prayer. It's not about giving money to a church and all that sort of stuff. It is about making a heart decision that you want to give your life to Jesus, that you want something better, that you want God to influence your life, that you believe in him. Jesus says this, that he is the way, the truth, and the life, and nobody comes to the Father except through him. Jesus is the only way to God. Regardless of what anybody tells you, if they tell you otherwise, they're calling Jesus a liar. Jesus spoke only truth. And Jesus said, if you believe in him, would you believe in him right now? You could simply just, in your heart, you could just say this with me right now. Jesus, come on. Jesus, I believe in you. I know that you're God. I know that you died for my sins. Please forgive me of my sins. Come into my life. In Jesus' name, amen. Listen, here at Influence Living, if you pray that prayer for the first time, we want to say congratulations, and we would love to hear your story. You can shoot me an email at wade@influenceliving.com and tell me your story, wade@influenceliving.com, or mail us a letter. You see the address right there on our screen, our Orlando P.O. Box, and write us there if you would like to. Also, you can connect with us on either YouTube. You can watch past programs and segments, or go to Facebook as well. Go to Influence Living at either one of those places. You can message us there on Facebook as well. We would love to hear from you and your decision to follow Christ. Listen, if you made a decision to follow Christ, you grow up now in your faith. Begin to talk to God on a daily basis. Begin to read in the Christian Bible. Go to the book of John. Find out who Jesus is. Also, go to a local Christian church and say, listen, I've made a decision to follow Christ. Grow me up. I need some help. And they will help you. And if they don't find a church that will. And listen, one more thing, if you'd like to be challenged a little bit more, particularly if you're a man, check out my most recent book, 39 Stripes. You can pick it up on Amazon. It is a daily devotional for 37 days that would just challenge your heart and help us as men to grow up in our faith as we deal with the sin that we battle in our lives. I wrote it just specifically for you or the man in your life. Go to Amazon, pick up a copy. Well, that about does it for this edition of Influence Living. Thanks so much for watching. Listen, one more thing. If you're ever in the Orlando, Florida area, there's 72 million visitors join us every year here in Orlando. If you're ever here on a Sunday, we'd love to see you at Greenway Church, the church that I pastor, Southwest Orlando, Greenway Church. And we have 3 services in English, 1 in Spanish. We would love to have you. Well, that does it for this edition of Influence Living. We'll catch you next time right here. Bye-bye.